Do you guys remember Strixhaven, the one with silvery barbs? Well, we're gonna go back to that book and talk about Vortex Warp. It's actually surprisingly a really strong spell. I didn't think much of it when it came out. Welcome to Pack Tactics, where I don't need to go to magical school to talk about spells. I could just talk about it through the internet. Vortex Warp, second level spell, has a range of 90 feet and takes an action to cast. You magically twist space around another creature you can see within range. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw, or the target is teleported to an unoccupied space of your choice that you can see within range. The chosen space must be on a surface or a liquid that can support the target without the target having to squeeze. By the way, the target can choose to fail the save. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, the range of the spell increases by 30 feet for each slot level above 2nd. I really like the imagery this spell invokes. It's really easy to see the relation between this spell and some of the older ones. Like Misty Step, it's a 2nd level teleportation spell. Like Thunder Step and Dimension Door, you can teleport someone else. And like Scatter, you can teleport people against their will. It is actually kind of interesting to see how design choices have changed over time. Let's compare Vortex Warp a bit more with Misty Step, as it's probably the first spell you guys thought of when I read the description. Unlike Misty Step, this takes an action and not a bonus action. Also, you use the spells in completely different ways. Personally, I don't believe Misty Step is often that useful. In combat, you would usually use it to retreat or get out of danger. But this is only really necessary if you're playing a squishy caster. If you armor dip, you'll likely be fine with your 24 AC. You may even be happy tanking for your other allies. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously there are situations where it would come in handy, but definitely not that often once you're sturdy. But Kobold, what about out of combat uses? Remember when I stole... Stole? What did you steal? What about a Find Familiar plus Misty Step combo? That's what I'm trying to say. Oh, that's what you mean. Well, sure. But how often will you need Misty Step in a situation like this over using just Find Familiar on its own? Or use spells like Firebolt to destroy objects, or Unseen Servant to perform human tasks for you. It's a really situational spell, and without getting it for free through something like Fate Touch, it's not often worth pursuing. However, Vortex Warp, while not necessarily being a spell you should insta-pick, is definitely a spell you should consider at later levels. Why? It actually does a lot of damage, or it can save your ally. Kobold, what are you talking about? The spell does 0 damage. In many fights, it might not actually be that potent, but it definitely can be. But before I continue, this video is sponsored by World Anvil, where you can create your own world and manage campaigns. Creating a whole world is a lot of work, but in D&D, you don't really need a giant world to run a full campaign. Like, look at Curse of Strahd. That's just one country surrounded by fog, and it's not that big. Kobold, Barovia's my favorite setting! Same! I ran a campaign there from level 1 to 11, and my players had a blast. Van Richten's guide talks about other domains of dread, but not in full detail sadly. But with World Anvil, it will help you make it super duper detailed and unique for your players. They will love it. Or you can do the fun thing and create your own domain of dread. Look, Kobold, this is Kobold Strahd. He has infinite pack tactics because there's no sun. Yeah! That's another thing you can do. With World Anvil, it's very easy to share this with other DMs, and maybe they can build a domain of dread with you. That can be a lot of fun. I highly recommend you check them out, and if you do, please press the link in the description. That helps me too. worldanvil.com/packtactics. And if you like what you see, they hope to earn your subscription. Use the code PACKTACTICS at the checkout to get 40% off your yearly subscription. Back to the video. Let's consider a situation where you're up against a very threatening enemy, like a Lich. The encounter begins while your party is 60 feet away from them. You have a barbarian player in your party with levels in Battle Master Fighter. They're an absolute menace in melee, but are required to dash in round 1 if they want to reach the enemy, leaving them unable to attack. Vortex Warp in a situation like this leads to more single target damage than probably any of your other spells, especially for its level. Why? Well, you teleported the barbarian in, and any additional damage they do because of that is basically due to you. Obviously, best case is not to have a melee ally at all, but you don't choose what everyone plays, and maybe someone just likes the idea of beating someone with a stick. I do. I think it's a really cool concept. I don't play those concepts though, but I do like the ideas. The point is, accelerating when their damage happens is simply just stronger. The earlier damage happens, the better it is, as you deny more turns from the enemy. This doesn't just happen in melee though. Just recently I was fighting giants in my game as a Gloomstalker. And as you know, giants are part of a small subset of creatures that are nearly as effective from range as in melee. And wow, they can throw rocks from a very far distance. Look, they definitely outdo the distance I could shoot with my hand crossbow. While I could swap to a long or short bow, I have a pretty powerful magical hand crossbow, so it would suck if I didn't get to use it. If I use action surge with my hand crossbow, I do 7 attacks in round 1. Being able to use my powerful weapon is definitely worth a second level spell slot for casters. And like I said, it's not just damage, it can also save someone's life. Unlike Dimension Door or Thunderstep, you don't have to approach the danger yourself, as you can teleport someone from a hefty distance. I've personally found myself out of position because of my Phantom Steed dying twice recently, and it probably could have saved me from dying once. I made a video about that, you should check it out, it's actually really interesting. Anyways, Vortex Warp is another strong spell introduced in Strixhaven. Unlike Silvery Barbs, it's not a must-have spell, and while it's not in my top 10 second level spells, it's definitely a spell worth picking up when your spell preparations are a bit less expensive, to say. End of video. Remember to check out World Anvil, and I hope to earn your subscription. Thank you for watching. Bye bye!